Well, welcome to day 7 of the 15th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. I'm Bob Ailes. I'm your moderator. As you can see, our presentation is Recipe for Engagement, Connection Strategies that Work. We have with us Julia Osteen. She is the director of the Center for Teaching and Learning at Lipscomb University, and she is also an assistant professor of education. And Julia's gonna cook up a good recipe for us, so it's all yours.
All right, thank you for that introduction. I'm excited to be with you all today, and I couldn't decide if it was very fair of me to pick a time that in Central Time Zone, at least it's right before lunch or not, but maybe it's very appropriate to be in this time slot. I don't know where you're coming from, so if you want to just mention like your location in the chat, that would be great for us all to know as well. Southern California, it's morning there for sure, right? Oh, great. We've got folks from a lot of different places. Well, I'm welcoming you from Nashville, Tennessee. So we're just kind of all over the place as far as location. But our agenda for today is that we're going to take a look at some gathering of the ingredients. What do we need to be able to come up with this buffet for our students to really engage them? And then we're going to look at some appetizers, which will be some community building and building of norms. We'll then go to the entree and we'll talk about some discussion protocols and some foundational knowledge. And then we'll have dessert. And those will be our sweet application to our own context. And then we'll have a time for question and answers at the end. So that's our agenda for this session. As we get into gathering the ingredients, I just want to introduce myself. Thanks to Bob for already providing that introduction. I have been in education for about 37 years now. And that makes me feel really old when I say that. I was a baby when I started, of course. But during that time, I've worked in both K-12 education as well as higher ed. I've been at Lipscomb for about 10 years now. Started out in the College of Education, made the transition to the Center for Teaching and Learning. And I love being able to work with all of our professors on campus as they work toward having really meaningful experiences for their students. So I do have some resources for you today. So I hope that you like to bookmark and take resources with you so that you can like really delve into them further. The first on the screen, you'll see the Recipe for Engagement website. This was built by myself and Dr. Hope Nordstrom, who is the former director of the Center for Teaching and Learning. And she is special counsel to our president at Lipscomb University on strategy currently. Also, you will see the second link takes you to a document, a Google Doc, that has links to everything I'm going to be referring to today. So you definitely want to make sure and pull that up so that you can kind of follow along as I'm mentioning things. Within on that document with all those links, there is a link to a handout. And that handout provides you a place where you can actually type in your notes for this session if you would like. It's simply a graphic organizer of sorts. So feel free to use that as well. So as we really gather these ingredients, we want to think about what are those things that come together to make this topic of connection strategies important. So Miller and Stiver, they are the people who really were the founding people of relational cultural theory. And basically they say, we're at best when we have the capacity to engage in and maintain growth fostering relationships. Now, there's a book that has come out in the last, they came out in 2019, and Harriet Schwartz is the author of that book. I highly recommend it. It is titled Connected Teaching, Relationship Power and Mattering in Higher Education. And in that book, she really talks about relational cultural theory and then how does that practically apply in the classroom. So I'm going to bring out some things from her work as well as we go through today. Also, I wanted to share that as we all experienced the pandemic, this idea of connection really rose to the top because we thought we were doing that very well, but it was just kind of innate because we were having all of our classes like in person or most of them in person. And the whole idea of really working at the connection piece didn't really come that much to the forefront. The pandemic really kind of forced that. Well, we had a dissertation group from our Doctor of Education program that studied this idea, and they titled their study Online Learning in a Time of Crisis. And that team made a couple of important recommendations. First of all, that there should be regular training for faculty on engagement, connection, and student satisfaction. And the second piece was that faculty provide intentional opportunities for connecting with students. And this would be on an individual basis, but also it would be as a group as well. So in relational cultural theory, Miller and Stiver say there are 5 good things. And those 5 good things are zest, clarity, sense of worth, productivity, and a desire for more connection. And as we consider those 5 good things, that those are the things that need to be in place in order for connection to be able to be made, for that to be built. We need connection the way we need air and water. And that is a direct quote out of Schwartz. Schwartz says, we need connection just as much as we need those fundamental things like air and water. Modern neuroscience also has validated some of the early tenets of relational cultural theory. And they simply say, we're simply hardwired to connect. That we, as humans, need others to survive. That we need to give to others, to participate in the growth of others. We need this development of a sense of belonging. Interdependence provides that sense of meaning and belonging, and we need to build community together as humans. So as we think about that, I also want you to consider that there's actually a continuum of connection. So we can have growth fostering connection, as you see on the right side of this diagram. And those would be things that are typically collaborative structures within our institutions. So the fact that there's mutual empathy, mutual empowerment, responsiveness, open to influence, that all is on the side of really creating that growth fostering connection. On the other end of the spectrum is a chronic disconnection. And oftentimes, unfortunately, some of our structures are hierarchical, I can't say that word evidently, structures tend to cause us to feel this disconnect. So this just provides us a visual that shows connection as a continuum. It simply is not just a one-time event. So each connection, whether it's single interaction or a long-term relationship, builds our capacity to teach and learn, to grow into our potential. And that's from Schwartz. It's a lot of small and big things together that can build that connection. So as we think about some of the things we're going to talk about today, you're going to say, oh, that's really small. That's not like that huge thing, but everything counts with this. So now that we have gathered our ingredients, let's dive into an appetizer, shall we? So I would encourage you to participate along with us on this. If you will go to this Padlet, you can use the URL that you see here. Also on the handout that has all of the links, there is number 5 says One Word Community Building Activity Padlet. So that's what you're going to do, is click on that. And I'm going to show you what that takes you to. So this is a Padlet, if you've not seen Padlet before. And you simply can just double click on it and then type in what you want your one word. So what would be one word that describes how you're coming to the session today? So go ahead and do that. Okay, so we've got some curious, engaged, distracted, neutral, excited and hungry. That could be me. Okay, so thank you for participating with that. So that is a really quick way to be able to do a check-in, whether you're have an in-person class or it's an online class or it's a hybrid of some sort. You can use a tool like Padlet. And the one word check-in is a very quick type check-in. I intentionally use the language of check-in and I don't use the phrase icebreaker. And the reason why is because we are a learning community. And as a learning community, we're going to check in with each other. We're going to see how everybody's doing and how we're coming to our learning today. Icebreaker has this connotation of it's fluff or extra, but a check-in is very necessary if you're operating as a learning community. And so that difference of language is really super important. So here's another example of a check-in. This is where are you on the train? This is the train. And some of these may be a little hard to see. I know it's a little fuzzy, but the question is, what number of numbers apply to you? So this could be in a check-in can be in connection with a content. So you can check in with your students. Where are you with this particular content? Maybe it's a difficult concept that you're really working on in class, and you can get an idea from them. Are they back at the station because they often miss the train, like they just totally missed the train? Or are they at number 4 where they're working really hard? Maybe they're at 6 where they need some help, or 7, confused and in a fog, or 9, maybe they're ahead of everybody else. Maybe they've like got this down, so they're ready to move on. So this is another idea, and you can see where the one word check-in is just simply typing in a word. This check-in is visual. It is an image. Another image that's really one of my favorites is the blob tree. I don't know if you all are familiar with the blob tree, but you can put that in Google and it will come up with lots of different images. And oftentimes with the blob tree, I like to ask my students, where are you on the tree and why? And that's their check-in, right? There are many more check-in ideas on the Recipe for Engagement website. And I just really want to encourage you to take a look at all those, because I'm not going to go through all of those today. So I have this reflection question for you. What check-in opportunities have you used, or does it occur to you you could add to your course? And how do you see this helping with building connections? So want to encourage you to pause just a minute and think about your answers to these questions. You can add some notes to your Recipe for Engagement handout, or you can add it in the chat, or you can unmute your microphone and share with us your answers to these one or two, both of these questions. Okay, I see that Shelley has shared a link to a picture. Fun way to see how students are doing and feeling. Thank you for that, Shelley. And I don't know if it's Alana or Elena, indicated a brain dump, beginning of class, write down feelings, distractions for 1 to 2 minutes and set that aside. So we don't think of those distractions during class. You know, that's really, that's a really good point. And that's often when I'm working with faculty, even, I will even ask them a question of what are they setting aside in that moment to be able to be fully present. And that's a great way. That brain dump is a great way to get our students more fully present with what's going on with class. Thank you for sharing that. A neutral question. What's the best gift you've ever given? Could be an opening up to conversation prior to the content. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially if you've got some content that could feel really vulnerable, make students feel vulnerable. All right, thank you all for sharing that. So now we're going to get into another appetizer, which is building norms. And so for this, I want you to consider how we might work together, since we're in this session together, how we might work together in the session, just to make sure that everybody is able to get, you know, what they need from the session. So again, I have a Google Doc here that you can go to. And that Google Doc, and I will looks like this as you get into it. And the directions simply are, look at the 3 proposed norms. So for our time together, it's a short time. So I've proposed norms. Look at the 3 proposed norms and expand on those or add other norms that you feel like would be needed as we are working together in this session. All right, somebody has already added, be open to new ideas. Post the link, absolutely. So in expanding on a norm, it might be, what does being responsible for your impact on the group look like? You know, and so that might be a way we would expand some of these. Oh, I see. Listen carefully to others. Avoid multitasking. That's really hard, isn't it? Especially since you're on your computer and you know, oh, there's that email back there somewhere. Unless you were smart and closed out of it. Right, research new ideas you may not have had the opportunity to look at before. Yeah, absolutely. So it's important for us to come together and to agree upon the way we're going to be together as a group. This is part of the community building piece. When I work with students, because we're together a whole semester, we do this from scratch and we build our norms. So I don't propose norms to them. I simply ask them to think of a time when they were part of a group they thought worked really well together. What are some of the things the group members did to make that productive? And so they take sticky notes and they list out the different things and they put a different one on a different sticky note. We combine them together and we do sticky notes so that we can group them together in different ways. And then they create norm statements that those are the norms that guide our work in the entire semester long. And I take that time to do that. You might think, well, that takes precious class time. It does take time to do, but I take the time to do that because then they have had a say in the foundation of how we are going to be together as a learning community. And they own that at that point then. And so that's another way to do norms. I will also share with you that, and this is linked off of the Google Doc, this Developing Norms handout comes from Rick DeFore, who was considered to be the authority on professional learning communities in K-12 education. And in that setting, they have to develop norms as well. So he has this set of directions as to how you go about creating norms with a group. The one thing that I actually differ from Rick DeFore on, and I'm not the expert on norms, but I do kind of have my own opinions here. He early on in the process will show examples of norms. And I find that if I do that too early in the process, it stops their thinking. Because they go, oh, well, those are perfectly good norms. Let's just use those. But then they're not their norms. And so what I do is take my students through the process. And then once we get to the point where we're developing norm statements, then I share with them some examples of, okay, here are some other norms that other groups have used, so that it could be helpful at that point. without stifling their thinking. So this is just another set of norms that we have used out of the Center for Teaching and Learning. This would be a set of norms for a virtual group. Because notice we added, turn your video camera on so we can see your face. Like that's important. So when you're on Zoom and doing a synchronous session online with students, sometimes they don't want to turn their video camera on. Mute your sound. You know, you have to think about those kind of logistical things as well that need to be part of your norms also. So let's reflect a moment. Why is it important to do this together, to take the time to really think about norms together? I would want to just invite you to unmute your sound and you can speak up or you can add comments in the chat.
To borrow from Brene Brown, clear is kind. So being clear about what the expectations are is kind.
Absolutely. I see somebody else trying to talk. I'm not sure we're hearing you though. I don't think we can't hear you. I'm sorry. I'm sure you have something really great to share. While he's working on that, go ahead and feel free to speak up at any point. But I wanted to mention that it's interesting. Okay, and I'm looking at the chat. Build the connections, and this can help with deeper understanding of content. Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, I love some Brene Brown. Absolutely. My students, it's interesting, since I have started doing this process of building norms with them, that on my course evaluations, they always mention the fact that we have norms that we govern by. We go back and look back at them after we create them. So they're living, breathing norms. We ask the question of, how are we doing with our norms? Is there a norm we particularly want to work on? That sort of thing. And because of that, my students recognize the fact that this is more than just something we did one time in class, that it actually is what we're living by. And so that's, you know, all positive comments about that piece in my course evaluations as well. So this would be a good time for you to write something down on your handout that you have for the session. We are going to move from, if there are no other comments. Okay, yes, absolutely. I always think about that, Eugene, I always think about that, reflecting on the impact on the group. Like that's something that always gives me pause as well. So thank you for sharing that. So now we're going to move into some entrees, from the appetizers to the main course. So now, in order to get to know where you are, where the learners in the session are, I want to encourage you to complete a short survey. You can get to it by going to pollev.com/J Osteen. I'll also happy to put that link in the chat for you. So if you'll go and just take a minute to complete that self-assessment. So I wanted to pull the curtain back a little bit to kind of show you what's behind there. And so this is, if you've not used Poll Everywhere for a survey, it lets you know like how many have completed, how many are still underway with your survey. And then it'll give you aggregate results by question. And so that you can see those. So you get an idea of where your group of learners are. And it's really important that you know that, and that's really the beginning point for being able to build connections and being able to engage learners, is knowing where they're coming from. And so that's super important. And so I wanted to share that. Now, if you would like those questions in a handout form, that is linked to the resources Google Doc, so you can get that and be able to download that for yourself as well to have those questions. I also wanted to bring up the Community of Inquiry framework. And a number of you may have seen this before, this research. Basically, what it tells us is that there are 3 elements that can help explain the educational experience online from a process perspective, right? So the first one, social presence. This is how engaged are the learners with one another and the instructor. Cognitive presence. How does the content presentation build knowledge and skills and provide for deep thinking and opportunities? And then teaching presence. How responsive is the course design and facilitation to students' needs? And so I offered this as one thing for you to consider when you're thinking about engaging students. This gives you some information, but also the URL that's on the screen, that's also linked up from that resources Google Doc, takes you to the website that the University of Virginia has. And it's ways to use the Community of Inquiry framework within your classes. And it has some really great practical suggestions for you. So I'll offer that to you as a resource for you to explore further. So now we're going to get into the next part of the entree, which is discussion protocols. And this is a strategy that I like to use, which it helps to encourage students' engagement, but it also helps to provide a little bit of a structure. I don't know about you, but there are times when I've asked my students to get in small groups and discuss a specific topic or a specific content. And if there's not more of a structure to it, the students they get together and go, "Hey, how's it going? What'd you do last night?" Right? And so they don't quite know how to get started, right? Some groups may have those, on task people that are like, "Oh, she said we're supposed to be talking about this, so let's talk about it." But other groups may not. So how do we actually get them to where they're focused in on the important topics that they need to discuss together? So I like to use discussion protocols for that. So this is an example of one. And if we had more time in this session, we would actually do this together. But this is called Save the Last Word. And the idea is that you've got small groups of like 3 or 4 people. And the first student shares what they have, what their answer is to whatever the prompt you give them. And then the second student, after the first student has like a couple of minutes to share. And then the other students, they will take a minute to respond to what the first person shared. And so they go in order in the group. And then the person who shared originally gets an additional minute at the end to say, "Well, now this is what y'all made me think about." The whole idea behind this is that each person's ideas, understandings, and perspectives can be enhanced by other people. And it is just a little more structured way for everybody's voice to be able to be heard. It's super important when using protocols like this that groups identify a timekeeper. They want to have somebody who's responsible for keeping up with time. Or if you're doing this with a synchronous session on Zoom, in breakout rooms, you can always give your broadcasts about, you've got this much time left. So you can do that as well. There is a link to this explanation on the Google Doc that is the resources document. It is also sometimes referred to as the final word. So, but those are the same protocol. Another one that's a favorite of mine is the Connect Extend Challenge protocol. And the idea behind this is that this could be done with a video, or it could be done with a text, or it could be done with a piece of artwork, actually. And the idea is that you ask students to think about first, how are the ideas, or how is what's being presented connected to what you already know? Extend is, what new ideas did you get? What pushed your thinking in new directions? And the third one, the challenge, is what's still challenging or confusing for you to wrap your mind around? So this actually is from a discussion board post, where this particular video, it happened to actually be about synthetic happiness. So this video was posted within the discussion board, and the students were asked to write their discussion post around the Connect Extend Challenge prompts. What I want you to see here is, even though this is blurry, and I apologize for that, but you can tell the post is at the top here, right? That's a pretty significant, detailed post. And they have followed the protocol. What's really interesting, that the bottom part of this is a comment that another student made on that student's post. So where we have to really teach our students how to respond to each other when it comes to discussion boards and things like that, because they don't know what a good comment is unless we model that for them. And so you'll see that this is a pretty substantive comment that's been left here for that individual. So having that protocol really does help to build deeper connections even between students. So I want you to think about this for a minute. We're going to pause for you to think, how do discussion protocols help with student engagement? So this would be a good time to add some notes to your handout if you would like. And if you would like to share with the rest of us, we'd love to see what you would want to say about that in the chat, or you can unmute your microphone and tell us. Yeah. It keeps them on track. Definitely helps to keep them on track. Do you think by using a discussion protocol that students would come away with that and realize, have more of a realization of what they got out of that experience? Yeah, helps to understand expectations. Absolutely. Okay, well, there we go. Okay, so the students know what it takes to succeed in your class. Yes, absolutely. So now let's move into our dessert, which is Suite Applications. This is where I want to encourage you again to go and explore the Recipe for Engagement website. It has some different discussion protocols than what I've been able to share with you today. It also has some different check-ins on there, helping students to know better of what they got out of it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you know, we're trying to help our students. Part of engagement is helping our students know what they've learned. And that's a metacognition piece. And so really having that ability to be able to reflect about what they've gotten out of something using a structure like that can be so very helpful. As you explore the website, feel free to add more to your handout. I do have one last activity that I would like to ask you to participate in. And this is a Jamboard. I don't know if you're familiar with Jamboard or not. And actually it's something I really love to use. But this URL on the screen will take you to a Jamboard, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. Oops. Yeah. And I'll grab the URL too and put that in the chat for those of you who need it. But the directions here are simply grab a sticky note from the toolbar on the left, list action steps you will take to enhance student engagement and student success. So you'll see there's lots of different tools on the left. The sticky note is the one that's kind of, well, it's the fourth one. It's kind of in the middle there. And you can just simply click, start typing, and then you can click save to add that in. So what's something you want to do to enhance student engagement and student success? Okay, use protocols and more structured small groups and discussions. Use more check-ins. Be more purposeful about structuring student reflection in class. Check-ins also like to review current discussion protocols and see where they can be improved. Great. Well, I really appreciate your participation in this session today. This is what I had to share with you. So at this point, I will stop the share and see if there are any questions or anything as we wrap up. I see some things about norms being put in here. That's great. Review those norms throughout the semester.
Yeah, I think you gave everyone some great ideas. Gee, you actually got them thinking about stuff.
Great.
So